It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Welcome back to another episode of Slashes in Sync. We're not talking about Immaculate today. Soon, at some point in the season, we'll get to Immaculate.
Yeah.
So bear with us on that. But we are talking about a cult classic. Well, can you call this movie a cult classic? It's 2019. Probably not, right?
I mean, it wasn't as popular when it first came out, and it seems to be gaining a lot of momentum, especially as of late. So I guess it kind of qualifies under cult classic, but it's still relatively new too.
Maybe like a sleeper hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think people did like it when it first came out, but I don't think it got the love it should have got, though.
No, definitely not.
It should have got like the Abigail love,
yeah,
if you will. Like, but then again, horror, like we've been saying, has just gotten so much bigger in the last like 4 years. So I think it kind of missed that mark of like just a year or two right before after the pandemic.
I definitely think it was ahead of its time, if you will. More so in the sense of like it wasn't creative or it didn't like think too far outside the box, but in the sense of like if this was released today, then people would be talking about it nonstop.
And you guys saw the title of this podcast. We are, of course, talking about 2019's Ready or Not, directed by Tyler Gillett, I believe, and Matt Open. Basically done by the team of Radio Silence. Radio Silence has made a name for themselves, covering and handling Scream 5 and Scream 6. They also did Abigail as well, which was a phenomenal film. Very cool theater experience.
Very refreshing.
Yeah. So overall, I'm a huge fan of this team. I'm a huge fan of what they've done with the horror genre. I feel like they've done a good job of mixing horror elements that are both new but paying homage to the classic stuff while also introducing like some dark comedy. I think that's the one thing people don't really give them credit for is that Scream 5, Scream 6, Abigail, Ready or Not has that like comedic, I guess, charm, if you will, but not in a way to where it takes away from the film.
Definitely not. Just like you said, it's just enough to where it doesn't break too far away from the movie or the lesson itself, I guess, if you will.
Like from being like, it is not a parody, but
yeah. But at the same time, like, there are moments where I won't say it doesn't take itself too seriously, but more so in the sense of, like, you get that comedic break, both mentally, like, and just emotionally whenever it comes to the characters.
I agree with that. And I think this movie holds up very well. We rewatched it recently. I think, like, when we first moved into our apartment, which was not too long ago.
Yeah, a few months ago.
And then I think we also watched it back at my parents'. And then I watched it with my sister as well. So I've seen it quite a few times. And the movie, I don't know if this is a movie where I would say it gets better every single time I watch it. But I think it definitely still holds up. And I had a blast just like always. So we'll go ahead and get into Ready or Not. Of course, spoilers. This is a few years old already, so if you haven't seen it yet, I apologize. But if you have not seen it, please go check it out. And if you don't care about spoilers and you listen to this and still want to go check it out, we appreciate that as well. And we hope you like our breakdown of Ready or Not. All right, so the opening sequence definitely hooks you, especially with the kid that we see doing a very kid-unlike thing, and he ends up turning in this victim who happens to be an older man in what looks like a suit. So he was there for a party or something. We come to find out, though, once we see the screaming bride, that he was in fact the groom. He was this woman's husband, but he's being chased down by these people in masks. Now, Marva, I say kid-unlike thing because I feel like in a lot of other horror movies, kids are usually doing the right things. Like kids aren't like, I guess you would say,
they have the right moral compass.
Yeah, they're pure still. You know, they want to do what they believe is right, like what their teachers think is right, what parents teach you in an early age and everything. And That wasn't the case here. Immediately
Mm-mm.
turned this dude in,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets shot with a bunch of arrows, taken away, and very interesting opening sequence. I don't think it's like one of the best in horror movies, but it definitely caught my attention and got me invested in the film.
Yeah. Similar to what you said, it wasn't like anything too spectacular, if you will. But the thing that caught me, and I guess it's the phrase that you use, the very much unkid-like thing.
Yeah.
Where you see these two kids running around in pajamas. They have like a little flashlight on them, and then one of them is like wandering around, runs across this dude, and instead of helping him escape, calls out to his family for them to scoop him up and do what they do best.
Right.
I feel like the masks were like pretty dope in the beginning, for like pointing down to what happens later on in the film.
Yeah.
But the opening scene was just enough to kind of keep me interested and keep going. Cutting forward to present day, you have...
Which is 30 years later.
Yeah, 30 years later, you have a bride sitting there in front of a mirror reciting her wedding vows, just like any other bride would be.
Yeah. And the bride, Grace, is portrayed by Samara Weaving, and she's wonderful in this, as she is like in any other horror movie, whether it's The Babysitter, whether it is the opening to Scream 6, like she's good in her own right. Counting this movie, and I believe she's done a few other Netflix horror movies, she's like a scream queen in her own right. I feel like women protagonists have been getting like hit right out of the ballpark, bro. They've all been pretty home runs as far as I'm concerned. Yeah,
all newer, older, somewhere in between, or people who climb up from scream queens into like quote unquote real actresses, if you will, which I feel like being an actress in a horror film takes more talent than other films, but that's either near here nor there. And I mean, that's my unbiased opinion, I guess.
You're good. We then get introduced to the groom, Mark O'Brien, and he is playing the character of Alex. You actually brought up an interesting point about this, so I'm gonna let you get into the whole bride and groom seeing themselves before the wedding. So.
Yeah, I mean, watching this, I've seen it a few times. I feel like I've seen it on my own a few times too, whenever you weren't around, because I enjoy the film that much. And the one thing that I caught this time watching it was that when Alex walks in on Grace reciting her vows, it's very much taboo, because in most films, or at least in Western films, the groom can't see the bride before the wedding, right? So essentially, first watching the film, I thought, oh, well, classic trademark, something bad's going to happen, and probably to Grace. Looking back at it after watching the film a few times, you can also kind of see that, okay, well, the bad luck isn't going to fall on Grace. It's probably going to be on Alex, because Grace didn't go out of her way to see him. He went out of hers. So he brought the bad luck onto himself, if you will. I see, which then instead, with extension, caught his family as well.
I see. That makes more sense now that you re-explained it. Yeah, I get you. Of course, all of this is like right before the wedding, so we start getting introduced to other family members. And every one of them is pretty much like a selfish, stuck-up character, except...
Classic Blue Bloods.
Yeah, except the, I guess, older brother, Daniel. And he's funny. Like, he's like taking jokes and taking jabs at his parents, his whole entire family. I think even his wife straight up, right? Like, oh, like she's pretty in her own way, this and that, but she'll never be one of us. Well, of course not. She has a soul.
Yeah. So. He's making these like very quirky jokes. If any of you guys have seen Gossip Girl, he's very much like the Chuck, if you will, but less dickish.
I think he's portrayed by Adam Brody too, which I believe I've seen that actor in other films as well. I can't remember if they're horror or not, but I've seen him before. So. Yeah,
he's been in there a few different films. This one I feel like is his most memorable, at least to me. So it's pretty cool. I mean, he's a nice little comedic break. The mom also seems like a decent enough of a woman in the beginning. Like, she puts on a face, sure, but she's one of the more transparent ones compared to the other family members. And then you have a cutscene into the wedding itself, which then it concludes.
Yeah. And there you go. Welcome to the Moss family.
Yep.
So, interesting about that, the other family member that we do see I said that really fast. The other family member that we do see is Aunt Helene. And she gives off like the creepy, like vibes. Like I didn't even think she was an aunt. I thought she was like a great grandmother. And that's like no disrespect towards her. It's just the demeanor she gives off. It's like this, almost as she's like the head of the entire family, not the sister to, I guess, the dad, right? The Alex and Daniel's dad. So she almost comes off like a hierarchy of that. But anyways, just overall bad aura, bad vibes. She's constantly watching over Grace like a hawk.
Kind of like a vampire, if you will, but you know, she's not a vampire because she's actually out in sunlight.
If she was an Abigail as a vampire, I wouldn't have
been surprised. No, not at all. She gives off very much like creepy, almost like cartoonish villainess. She's very easily like suspicious towards the audience at the very least, and you can also tell that Grace is very uncomfortable whenever she's around.
I think that's where it becomes really smart that they play off the comedic humor of the film, but also still having that, because I feel like if you had like her come into the room on them making out saying that's no place to hide, or like you better hide better, and if Grace had made like a funny joke or something after that, then you're starting to borderline between parody and in a regular film. But the fact that Grace was uncomfortable, like you said, creates that, you know, that tension and that that drama between them. I think that's what really helps the writing in this, because like you're right, she's very cartoony in the way she talks and acts. You know, like walking in like almost as like she's like from the Stefan and Damon family, just gliding right into the room, and that's no place to hide. Like it's like her jacket's kind of hugging her neck, making her neck look really long. Like when I first saw her, I was like, all right, who's this bat? Yeah. Tell me, please, by all means. I want to figure out who she is. I mean, we come to find out who she is later on down in the film, which I feel like was a nice little twist, and I thought it would play, like the movie would play out in a certain direction, especially after, especially watching it the first time, but seeing the way that the movie plays out on its own was also a nice little twist in and of itself. Seeing that is kind of what leads us into this, because she keeps mentioning hide. So that's when Alex has to explain to Grace that they have to play a game. Mm-hmm. It's mandatory after every wedding that they have in the family. And
any new LeBeau family member.
And it is...
Family member.
Yeah, man. It's really weird because it's like she has to play it. She's forced to play it.
Mind you, Alex is not doing a good job explaining this shit. At all. Like, he's just like, hey, now that we're married, I figure I should tell you this. My family's weird. She's like, yeah. No. My family's weird in the sense to where you have to play a game in order to be part of the family, for sure. And Grace, being the queen that she is, just kind of like makes a joke and says, okay, was it checkers? Is it chess? What is it? And I guess because all the other games have been more easy, if you will, or less tense, he kind of laughs it off, sorta, in a nervous-ish chuckle, because all the other games have been more tame. So I guess the whole scary part, or the fear that you see behind Alex's voice or his demeanor, is that if she does pull a specific card, something bad could really happen, or almost like this energy where she's kind of fucked either way. It doesn't matter what she pulls.
And like you said, he does a kind of a bad job of like really giving that vibe. Like you can tell something is going to happen. And plus you know you're watching a horror movie. Mm-hmm. So you know something's going to happen. But I think what really sells it is not Alex and his half-assed explanations. It's everyone around Grace and Alex. Yes. You progressively see Daniel turn from the jokester that he was to like just sitting in the chair. His tie is undone. He looks out of it. You could tell he's probably been drinking. I feel like the jokes is the way for him to cope during the day. And then whenever he gets a bottle, that's his second coping mechanism, And then you see the other members too, kind of like gathering around Grace. Like the energy's a lot different. Things
are shifting. People are moving. Everybody else in the family but Grace knows exactly what's going on. Alex is not cluing Grace in any way, shape, or form, no matter how much he seems to be trying. Like, first time watching this through, I was just like, okay, is he trying to scare her, or is he really trying to say something without really saying anything? Because if he does, because in my mind, I made the headcanon that what if he is fully transparent with her? What if that kills him? And who knows? Maybe that is the case. Like watching the movie through and then watching the movie a few times over, I kind of believe the headcanon that I made, where if he was upright with her up front, he either would lose her, one, or two, something would happen to him and his family. I mean, with Daniel's wife, she ended up being like an unloving, uncaring individual who was just like money hungry. Yeah, she came from the slums, or at least that's what it's implied later on in the film whenever the two of them were having a more private exchange, if you will. But
she basically sold her soul.
Yeah, at the same time, like, I'm curious to what she would have been prior to all this. But jumping back to the point of the film, Grace doesn't take Alex seriously. He makes a comment about where she needs to meet the family, and of course, Alex, being old money, has several different rooms, and she makes the comment off of it because you can tell Grace is not from that world. And
I think they call her like a foster child or something, right?
They call her a foster child. Yeah. She's been through different homes. She has not seen like money or like actual family. I think in the beginning, Alex even says something to Grace about how she'll finally have a family of her own, and she's pretty excited too, which is, it plays into the eagerness of her being willing to get along with all these colorful personalities, if you will.
You can almost imply, I didn't even think about it like this, a parallel between Daniel's wife and Alex's wife, whereas Alex's wife, Grace, comes from the slums, comes as a foster child, never had a family, was probably never rich at any point of her life.
Yeah.
Struggled a lot. And she handles this thing this way, and she pulls that card. Whereas Daniel's wife doesn't pull that card, and immediately, because of her background and everything, sold her soul. But due to how the character progressed, and even before the interactions, when we get to the ceremony in a second, I feel like, I don't know if she wouldn't have went balls deep into the family the way.
No.
I don't think she would have, like...
No.
I think her and Alex probably would have just moved away or something.
Yeah, they both seem to have some form of subconscious or some form of voice in their head that would tell them, like, hey, like, let's think this through.
Because the implication is that Alex left the family for a long time. Like, he said, fuck this shit, I'm not sacrificing nothing. Like, yeah. Like, because it's not just people. They seem to sacrifice goats too. So it's exactly. So he got tired of this shit and left. So he hadn't seen them in a while.
Yeah. Long time. I think the wedding is the way for him to kind of like mend things, and then also have Grace meet with the family and just like be with the family. Obviously, after this whole discussion and everything, and Grace pulling the card that she does, it being hide and go seek, Alex and everybody else freak out. Alex in his own way, and everybody else just kind of like look at each other and seem to understand exactly what's going to happen.
And I think I'm just going to read the wiki on this because that'll probably explain this a lot better than Marva and I can off the cuff or even writing it down. The whole point of this game is that Tony, which is the name of the father to Daniel, Alex, and Emil, Tony explains that his ancestor Victor Ledemas made a deal with someone named LaBelle to build the fortune in exchange for the family observing a tradition. At midnight on their wedding day, every new member draws a card game from LaBelle's puzzle box. And like what Marva said, hide and seek, it's more like hunt and run. Yeah. Essentially.
I mean, once Grace pulls the card and everything, the family seems to play an old record, and it's a hide and go seek record.
Very creepy.
It's creepy. It's playing over an old megaphone, but in the lyrics itself, it literally says "Run, rabbit, run."
Yeah, so there you go. Once we get to that part, that's where the movie really picks up. Yeah. We have butlers dying, maids dying, family members are getting knocked off, like happening left and right.
Blood and guts in a lot of different ways.
Exactly. But I think the one true plot point that we can talk about during all of this is Daniel. Yes. Because Daniel, on multiple occasions, helps out Grace.
In one way or form. Like, in the beginning, he runs into her in a room, doesn't really say anything,
I'm just here for a drink.
Yeah, tells her that he's here for a drink, and then that he's going to give her 10 seconds of grace before he calls the family over. I'm pretty sure it's more than 10 seconds, even though he only counts to like 1,000. Mind you, he's doing it really slow. Before he calls people over, and then that's where Daniel and his wife have that more private exchange that I mentioned earlier, where Daniel mentions about how his wife didn't even like wait a second to sell her soul for being able to have the kind of resources that she has now. She even says it herself that she'd be more than willing to die versus go back to how she was living prior. So we don't know just how far down she was, but I mean, at least for me, I don't know about others. I know she wasn't too far into the slums to where she would have been, I guess, just looked over whenever it came to Daniel living out his life outside of his family.
Is that supposed to be the implication?
Yeah.
That, like, do you think maybe Alex was the first significant other to not tell his partner, like, what was going to happen?
Prior? No, I feel like the aunt as well, because around this time of the movie, we come to find out that the great aunt, or the aunt herself, is the bride that we see in the beginning of the film, the bride who's screaming out in despair, watching her husband be, like, skewered with arrows and different things, right? But while she's talking about it, she seems remorseful, but as time passes, you come to find out that no, she seems very much okay with it. If anything, she figured out a way to justify it. Maybe it's a form of mourning and a way of coping, but she also is very much devout to LeBeau. Meaning in a sense of like she's always talking and respecting the chair where LeBeau seems to sit at.
She even says her and Alex share like a connection, right?
Yeah.
That's she even like calls her other nephews and nieces like
it's time for them to become part of the family, to understand tradition. She's very much like tradition bound, while everybody else seems to want to move forward, or at the very least use other resources like security cameras. Yeah. And this is all happening while Grace is avoiding everybody by the skin on her teeth. Because mind you, Daniel is the only one in this film who seems to be the one with the hunting gear on, at the very least, who seems to very much not be killing her, or at least like ready to kill her on sight. He gives her a bit of grace before he goes for it.
Now, I can't remember fully, but is it explained? Is it Daniel or Alex? Who's the one that rats out the husband in the beginning of the movie? I
think it's Daniel. That's the reason why he's abusing drugs and alcohol so much. Okay. Again, his wit comes into play whenever everybody's cleaning up the maids or the bodies that are collecting throughout the house, which is pretty funny.
I love how, like, for a good 20 minutes, or you just, like, see him in the background, like, just drinking a bottle. Yeah. He's just kind of, like, moving from place to place, like, looking for her, you know?
Yeah. He's coping. We all know this. I mean, I would be taking massive-ass drags if I had to live with that kind of family.
But, yeah, great. Like what Marva said, Grace is just, like, getting by the skin of her teeth, but she's also a badass too. She's pushing through
in a lot of ways where I didn't think she would. I mean, maybe her being the foster child that she was means that she went through a lot of trials and tribulations when she was younger, so she knows just how far she can push herself. But at the same time, you can see the utter fear and the utter shock on her face as well.
Especially
through from every single experience.
Especially with situations like the kids.
Yes.
Like when that kid shoots her.
Georgie,
I just don't think she expected that at all. Like that was just...
Which, let's take a second and dive into that scene, because when Georgie shoots her in the hand, she freaks out, punches him, right? He falls into a wheelbarrow. I don't know what happens after that. I don't really remember all too well, but she kind of ricochets off that force and into these wooden panels.
Oh no, a goat scared her.
Oh.
Yeah. After she punches him, she goes to pick up like the flashlight or whatever, and the goat like rushes her. But just because it's on a chain, I think it was confused, and she falls back.
She gets scared. She falls back, and she falls through these wooden panels and falls into this ditch. At first, I thought it was like a waste ditch. I was right, but not the kind of waste that I thought. It had carcasses in it, and very much decomposed carcasses. And
it had both.
Both?
It had both. It had trash and it had corpses and shit like that, which I think is why she ends up vomiting. I can't even imagine that smell. People say that the smell of a rotting corpse is horrible.
Yeah.
throw in like weeks worth of trash on that
Yeah.
too. Like that's.
I mean, that's how you disguise it, right? I don't know. It was just she figures out a way to climb out. Well, you have that one, I guess, like torture horror scene that everybody's waiting for. She's climbing up the ladder, doing a great job with her freshly wounded hand, making sure she doesn't use it. Ladder gives out, and she's forced to put down her other hand to try and grab onto the rail to make sure she doesn't slip down and never gets out again. Her hand gets a nail in it, but it goes through the fresh gunshot hole that she has. And my God, is the actress for Grace such a good, like, she portrays the pain and like that fear very well. I remember from first watch all the way to present day, I always tense up. I always like clench anytime that scene's about to play. And I see the nail go literally through her hand effortlessly because there's nothing there to stop it.
Man, and you
it makes my skin crawl every time.
And you could still hear like a tiny little bit of like flesh tearing. Like,
it's a squelch.
It's a little sound effect they threw in there because I guess whatever remaining flesh was there, like it just the nail just tears right through it. And man, dude, there's movies where they do that, like someone walking up the stairs and like nail right through the foot or something, and those always get me, man. Like they're
I can't, like, it's my biggest fear. I've taken tetanus shots before and they don't feel good, so knowing that I would need to take one after that experience would literally break me. The shot itself hurts, mind you. I have like tattoos in areas that most people shouldn't get tattoos, like my spine. So
it's a badass piece.
But seeing a nail or having a nail go through my foot without my consent makes me very scared. Too scared.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I mean, I get freaked out when I get a paper cut, let alone like a whole something going right through my hand. Yeah. Bro. Like that's, but it's like what people say, right? Like it's all like a mental thing. Like people don't realize like how fast we swing our arms or like how much a bite of our, when we're eating food is.
The bite
like,
force that we have.
Like it's, so I can just imagine that. Like it's, oh my gosh, man. But
so I give her props.
Yes, Samara Weaving does a real good job. The Babysitter movie, I'm not the biggest fan of on Netflix, that horror movie, but she's definitely the best part in that movie.
Yeah.
Like her acting is just like top notch. I'm waiting for her to be like in some like Quentin Tarantino or like Martin Scorsese, and she just blows people out of the water. Like
she fits the role. She fits the type.
Her acting is, it's like she's very much like Jenna Ortega, where Jenna Ortega really got her start doing like, like some TV shows and like some horror movies and like B-level movies, but she's so good at acting that if you were to put her in a movie with like top level, like she's not gonna fall. Like, no, she'll be right there with them.
She'll find a way to shine on her own and with them.
But anyways, I think after this scene with the barn and the nail, that's when Grace makes her way into the highway area, but she gets caught by, I guess, a butler who is patrolling the area. They get into a whole fiasco, fight, car, whatever situation. The car flips. She then makes her way back to the mansion, I believe. How does she get back to the mansion?
So I
actually forgot that part.
She makes it out of the barn. She books it towards the gate, right? Grace, being the tiny little girl that she is, and what I mean by tiny is that she can mostly fit through the gate without it fully opening. And again, here's another like semi-torture scene where when she's trying to push herself through the gate, you have a certain portion of it scratching her back and into her spine, which look and sounds painful in this film. She manages to get herself mostly out, but then a car driving by doesn't stop. She freaks out because she hears somebody walking by and patrolling the area, gets herself back in through the gate, hides, somehow gets caught. And when she's caught, it's by that very butler that she assaulted in the beginning before running out into the field. Butler like takes her in, puts her in the car, has her all tied up, and the butler calls the family. Mind you, he's the only remaining quote unquote help left in the mansion because everybody else has been killed off. And it's pretty funny because the running joke of the film, at least among the family, is that they keep asking whether or not the help dying counts.
Yeah.
Because everybody seems to like Grace in one way or form, except for a few family members here or there. They seem to actually like her.
Yeah, I think Aunt Helene's like the only one who has something against her, but it's mainly because she wants, I guess, Alex to do the right thing and kind of correct what she didn't do back in the day, kind of like making him live her life, you know?
Yeah, correct the sins that she conducted on her own.
Yeah, but you talking actually reminded me of how she gets back there. So when she runs into the last remaining help, the butler, they get into the whole fight. Car crashes, and when she wakes up, she runs into Daniel in the wood. Daniel is the one who makes that joke, like, "Look at that. You're messing up my tranquility." Because they keep running into each other. He does not want to be a part of this. No,
he doesn't want to be anywhere near Grace. It's very obvious. Like he did his part years ago during that first hide and go seek round where the aunt's husband got killed, and that was that. He does not want any part in this at all, and you can tell. Yeah, his wife even says it. Like, you're doing anything.
And I think he takes her in because I think implies that the dad is watching, or like the family is watching through their cameras or whatever, similar to how they were watching with the butler. Yep. So he has to take her in, but it was all a plan because once they tie her down and get ready for the ritual, which was kind of insane, by the way. I wasn't expecting to see the whole, the backwards, like, I guess, star symbol that people like to point out, and then
the upside down pentagram, the
and then like all that, like it's
the chanting, the Latin.
They got really in there.
The Hail Satan. I mean, before all this, Alex kind of opening up and to his mom saying how he realized that sacrificing people and goats isn't a normal thing. They do it often. So there you go. And then you have Grace all strapped up like the actual sacrifice that she is. So they're all about to do it. And Grace, I guess, figures out a way to slightly maneuver herself to where the knife doesn't go through her chest.
No, that's later. Oh. Daniel poisons them with hydrochloric acid and makes them all puke up. Oh, and then that's when Grace escapes with Daniel's help. They then run into Daniel's wife. Yep. And Daniel's wife, who I think utters the line, "You don't care if I die or not." So I think she's a little jelly here that maybe... I just said jelly.
PB and jelly?
Who would have thought? She's jealous that maybe he's over here trying to help out Grace. And
versus herself.
Not really worried about
she has a virtue to save while everybody else could be damned.
Because I think everyone here is under the impression that LaBelle will kill them. Yeah. Like, something's going to happen to the family.
Yeah. Mind you, both Grace and Alex throughout this film seem to be kind of playing with the idea that the whole family's crazy. Nothing's going to happen if she doesn't die. They're just over-exaggerating. Right. Alex keeps tapping into it. Daniel even at one point, references it here and there, but at the same time, everybody else is very much balls deep in this shit. Like, even the mom is while talking to Alex, says, "Hey, if you really didn't believe in this shit, you wouldn't have shown up here to have the wedding. You would have had your own wedding. So why did you make sure she pulled the card?"
Yeah, because I actually think Alex, the one who didn't believe in this, or the one who doesn't, whatever cares what happens to the family, I think, like what you just said, how you were repeating what the mom said, if you really didn't believe, you wouldn't have brought her. You wouldn't have brought her here, and you would have made her pull a card. Yeah. I think he did believe that he was scared. Whereas I think Daniel was the real person in the family who actually didn't believe it. Because
he was the one who was questioning it and questioning it openly.
Because you catch that line, right? When he's escaping with Grace, he's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's not enough acid to kill them, but they'll be shitting for a week." Yeah. So I don't think he really thought that by 6 a.m. his whole family, including him, was gonna blow up. I really don't think he believed that. I think he just thought that they were fucking sick in the head, and that's why he copes with it. That's why he drinks, because he just can't get out of this loop. But I don't think he believed there was some supernatural element there. No, yeah. So that's when he runs to the wife. The wife shoots him and kills Daniel. R.I.P. a goated character. Then
that's a very slow death.
Slow death as well, yeah. Good catch. And then Grace comes in, beats the shit out of the wife, and she runs off. She gets into a fight with the dad as well. And I'm thinking of the gag reel. Fuck the altar. Yeah. Sorry, I'll be back. But she gets into a fight with the dad, and then she beats the dad up with the lamp, starts a fire in the house.
Yep.
She then runs into the mom, so it's like back to back here.
It's family member after family member after family member.
So back to back, she gets into a fight with the mom, kills the mom, I believe, right?
With the same box that she pulled the card out of, which I think is insane. Mind you, the mom says some like spiteful and hateful words to Grace before she gets killed, so I think that's the reason why Grace kind of snaps.
Yeah.
While this is happening, Alex comes across Daniel's body, and Daniel is taking his last few breaths. So Alex literally is holding his brother in his arms while he dies. He walks in on Grace delivering like the final blows to his mom's head. So I think that's when he snaps, and he's just like, I can't love her after this, so I'm just going to call my family over. But before he does that, he tries to see where Grace falls as far as like being okay with him or not goes. Because he reaches out to her, she avoids his hand. He tries touching her, she says, don't touch me. And then that plus seeing her mother and brother, be killed, presumably both by Grace, which wasn't the case. It just kind of made him snap.
What did you think of that, by the way, after rewatching it? Do you still feel like he wasn't in on it in the beginning? Or do you feel like him seeing Daniel die is what threw him over the edge?
So when you say he wasn't in on it, I take it as he really didn't know what his family was going to do. He knew what his family was going to do.
I more so mean, like, was he really trying to help her?
I think he was. I truly think he was. After watching it a few times, because in the beginning I was like, all right, bullshit. Like, he's just playing along. He wants to get that good final kill. But as I keep watching it, I see authenticity behind it. Do I think he was really all good, all pure just because he found Grace? Definitely not. No. He had his demons. He was trying to battle them. He was trying to suppress them. He wasn't really trying to confront them. I mean, the mom made it kind of seem that while he left the family, it was still recent enough to where they were bringing it up a lot. They hadn't made peace with it. So recent enough, obviously ranges, it can be somewhere between like 15 all the way down to like just a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
We know it's at least a year and a half because the mom mentions that Alex and Grace have known each other for about a year and a half before she kind of storms off when she's still alive, of course.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I do think he was trying to help her in the beginning, because he does say something interesting when he sees Daniel taking his last breath. She's like, don't go, I need you. So
yeah. I feel like Daniel was probably his moral compass.
He definitely cared for his brother. So yeah. That leads to the second ritual, what Marva was talking about earlier, where they're really starting to like just chant hell. Saturn. So they're
I just said
it. So they're hailing Saturn over there, and then that's when you have them go for the kill. Mind you, it's like right before sunrise. They go for the kill. She maneuvers her way, catches her in the arm. She's able to escape, grabs the knife, and this is what sets up the best. I don't think it's the best part, but it's definitely the funnest part to watch of the film.
Most entertaining.
Definitely kind of like an early version of what we see in Abigail with the vampires.
Yeah, I can see a trademark.
I'll let you explain it.
So, throughout the first and second take of the rituals, you have the great aunt or the aunt essentially saying how we need to make sure Alex is the one who kills Grace. This is his rite of passage. He's the one who's supposed to lead the family moving forward. That's the reason why we're doing hide and seek. Like, I knew I should have taken on this role whenever it came to my round, but I didn't. She also seems to be kind of wacko crazy, like looking at an empty chair, talking to LeBeau. And whenever Grace is up holding the knife and dawn has finally broken, everybody in the room is just kind of standing there being like, oh, well, you know, we were paranoid for nothing. Things are going to be fine. We're not really going to die. She's the only one who's still looking at the chair and being like, all right, we still need to kill her. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Grabs her giant fucking axe, which I still think is comedic. It's bigger than her. And before she can even swing it, she explodes.
Blood and guts
everywhere.
man.
Almost exactly like how it was with Abigail. Less like drenchy and more just kind of like chunky, if you will.
As an editor, I can kind of see the difference between them.
Yes.
That's why I think you and I both agree that it's like an early version of what they would, I don't want to say perfect, but what they would, do and use in Abigail, because in Abigail it's almost more of like a very spontaneous and
water balloon,
like, whereas this one you almost kind of see like a little, like,
you see a slight little like poof and then they explode, or like a little warning sign. The people know that they're about, like, something's wrong. The Great Aunt, I think, is the only one who doesn't really show any signs. You have Fitch, who like kind of goes, oh dear, and then he explodes, and then you have everybody else just kind of going down the line. Even the kids explode, which I think is fucking funny. The last person who dies via explosion is Alex, and you see Alex once again flip the switch about like, oh, I was wrong, like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been the one.
Take me back, babe.
Because mind you, he was the one who was holding the knife over her head. He was the one who like held her down, got her all tied up for a ritual round 2. So me being in the position that I would be where Grace is at, I too would be like, nah, you know what, fuck you, I don't know, you were selfish, hell no. Yeah. But he seems to be holding on, and he seems to be making a point about as long as they're together, there's a chance for them to be okay, right? So she pulls off the ring. Now, I don't know if it's ironic timing or if it's because of the fact that she said, I want a divorce, and LeBeau is willing to make the exception because he was recently married, to where Alex explodes. But shortly after that, Grace looks over to the chair that the Great Aunt was looking at, and the fire kind of licks the back of the chair, if you will, out of the fireplace, and you see a silhouette of a person looking straight at her.
Grace is, I guess, the second person to see Mr. LaBelle. I think the first person was Alex, right, when he was a kid.
Yeah. So that's where she just kind of like starts walking out of the house. She grabs a cute little cigarette case that the mom had, sits down, and now she's walking out. Mind you, the house is just burning more rapidly and rapidly. And this is where the finale comes into play.
Very similar ending to Abigail, where Melissa Barretta's character walks out, and but instead of smoking, I think she's eating like her little lollipop
that she had in the beginning,
because she quit smoking, so she's always having to eat something, or so I thought that was a very interesting like little nod there, if that was a nod. Mm-hmm. So overall, dope film. I'm interested to see what the Rotten Tomatoes score is. Not that we really judge it by, it's just kind of fun to look at it. 89% critics, 78% audience.
Yeah.
I actually would probably put the audience up to 80. I would say it's an 8 out of 10 film.
I would say 80. It's good. Like 8 out of 10, like you said, or like a 4 out of 5. I don't know. Yeah, it's nice. It's a good movie. It's an easy watch. It's an easy rewatch. You don't need to know too much beforehand. You don't need to know too much after. I remember the second time you and I watched this film, though, I think we got into like a mini debate on whether or not it has to be hide and go seek. And then as things played out in the film, I realized, no, I was the dumb one, that it does have to be hide and go seek.
You're good.
Every other game is just fine. That Grace just had the luck of my luck, I guess, and pulled hide and go seek.
Card.
Yeah, versus all the other cards that there could have been. I mean, even the mom makes a joke to one of her in-laws about how she really likes Grace and doesn't like him, and would have preferred her over him, which I think is fucking hilarious. But anyway,
this is a good movie. I actually am still sad about Radio Silence and Scream 7, but I feel like at least without them working on the Scream franchise, because who knows how long Spyglass would have wanted them to milk that franchise. This, I think, seeing movies like this just makes me happy to know they can kind of do things creatively in their zone, and I have to worry about like a known franchise or a known entity, because I think that sometimes handicaps people.
Definitely, it confines them.
Because you got to pay respect to that character. You can't fuck up Michael Myers. You can't fuck up Ghostface. Like, you got to like pay respects to what people know, and at least with this stuff, they can go out of their way and do very unique and create dope stories and films for us to watch. Yeah,
they can very much personalize it. There's no lines or borders that they need to follow. They can tread their own path.
But let us know what you think of Ready or Not. Hopefully, Immaculate. Not going to say it's coming up next, though, because we don't know. But for sure,
we're going to try.
Yeah, I might just buy it. That way I don't have to worry about renting. I might just buy it tonight. That way we can watch it. But anyways, let us know what you think of Ready or Not. Thank you for joining in on this episode of the podcast. Make sure to go check us out on YouTube. If you're not able to listen to us on a monthly subscription service, go check us out on YouTube Music for free. Also, we're available on Apple Music, and go check out our Instagram and TikToks. Of course, TikTok and Instagram stuff will be linked down below in the description. As always, thank you for tuning in.
Bye.